Hey everybody, Road to Recovery here. Today we're going to be talking about acknowledging the external harms of porn. I've spent a lot of time in this channel talking about the internal or self-harms of pornography. I've left out the external harms of porn thus far because I've always considered the plight of the addict as a perpetual state of self-harm. And ultimately, it is the only tangible area that can be addressed by the addiction. Sometimes I feel it's necessary to point out the harms that we are complicit in contributing in. The harms aren't often in our faces. Sometimes it's the addiction that hides them, and sometimes it's just we choose to ignore them, and other times it's because industry and the players around the industry trying to hide them from us. Certainly, there are many other causes and channels that focus almost exclusively on these external harms. And for a few years, I've been comfortable staying out of the wheelhouse. I've recently decided that perhaps I ought to address the external harms. My critique comes as a person who, despite being sex positive, I see a great deal of problems with pornography as an industry. I think that there is a lot of inconvenient truths about pornography, both as a business operation and as a mechanism of social disruption. The most recent elephant in the room has been that of human trafficking. This is your trigger warning. Things are about to get uncomfortably horrible. If you were or are using Pornhub, this is the part where you want to start paying attention. Rose Kalimba was raped as a 14-year-old girl. Her attacker had picked her up off of the street, raped her for 12 hours while a third man filmed parts of the assault. The attacker showed her attacks that he had done onto other women using a laptop, and then told her that he would kill her if she talked. They dumped her back onto the street, all bloody. A few months later, Rose was browsing MySpace when she found several people from her school sharing a link. She was tagged, clicked on it, and then Rose was directed to the pornography sharing site Pornhub. There, she had to relive all the horrors of the events that had happened. Rose had to fight for a long-ass time before the content was eventually removed. I'll link the full story below if you wish to read the horrible details. In another case, a 15-year-old girl was found after a mother was tipped off that her daughter was being featured in videos on Pornhub. 58 total. Her trafficker, who was seen in the videos raping her, was identified using surveillance footage of him at a 7-Eleven. A Pornhub subsidiary called Girls Do Porn, whose content is also shared on Pornhub, deceived and coerced women into performing sex acts. The site's owner, Michael Pratt, was sued by 22 women and won a $12.7 million lawsuit against the company. They also produced child pornography and trafficked a minor, leading to Pratt to flee the country. Pornhub also hosts videos of a 49-year-old elementary school teacher having sex with a 14-year-old girl. The teacher eventually faced 24 felony counts and is now serving 7 years in prison. One thing that I have to stress is that I'm giving you documented examples of trafficking. There is a ton of content out there where there is likely trafficked individuals whose identities will never be known, at least to the public. Even if they do get justice, the details of the cases will likely never be released to the public because of the court protections. The scope of human trafficking on porn aggregators is likely very understated. And I know from my own personal porn viewing, and again, just letting me tell you that this is over 3 years ago, before recovery, and I suspect it's much worse now, that there was a shitload of content that always looked sketchy in my eyes. From my own personal experience, I know that I had gotten bored of the same old professional porn stars, and then I turned to the amateur circuit for some fresh and invigorating new faces, not the studio sets. And I have to suspect that I'm not the only guy that goes down that road, and that road often leads to dark places. Anytime you have a free-for-all porn posting, it becomes an ethics-free zone. Pornhub and many of the other porn aggregators profit off of their content. In none of these situations cited above did any of them act quickly to take down content. Just a few more clicks gets them advertising revenue, even if it's off the backs of somebody else's misery. Many of these multi-billion-dollar companies are hijacking human sexuality and profiting off lifelong trauma of somebody else. Likewise, there is also the problem of underage content making it to sites like Pornhub. A lot of that content comes from cam sites, where content isn't verified or age checked. Anyone underage cannot legally consent to sexual expression on a webcam, even if they wanted to. With the vast swath of underage people with smart devices, they are prone to making foolish mistakes. But more importantly, the unforgiving world of online pornography and porn aggregators will keep that content swirling around for ages. As the age of most of those teens cannot be verified without the producers getting in a lot of hot water, the content gets labeled as either teen or jailbait and is collected across the internet with no means of being able to prove legal harm by the porn aggregators. But the collectors know, and they get away with it, and often do. It's a way of hiding obviously illegal content in plain sight. Hence, the label child exploitation materials. The exploitation isn't always by force, but it is almost always done with money. And let's not forget that a growing number of these consumers are also below the legal age. To date, any teenager can easily go to Pornhub and watch a gangbang, simulated rape, or simulated incest video. The counter-argument I hear is that parents should parent, which is true. But that doesn't negate the reality that there are no real barriers to content. A person visiting a strip bar has to be carded. That process doesn't really exist online. Of the few sites that do offer age verification, it's often the hosts forcing a checkbox and then somebody clicking OK. Hence, we are living in the most pornified generation that's ever lived. And I haven't even gotten into the countless numbers of stories of porn stars that had their lives destroyed through their legal participation in porn. There are literally dozens of stories written by ex-porn stars that recount their troubles in the industry. Some were either broken by it, and others found that it only exacerbated their own troubled past. But I'm sure I don't need to tell you that anyone who willingly enters an industry that exists to monetize their sexualization of their body might have some issues. I say that not as a way of degenerating sex workers, rather as a way of reflecting on what it actually means when one ends up there. When a random child at school is asked what she might want to do for a living when she gets older, sex work isn't going to be an answer. As adults, we want what's best for kids, and we all know that sex work isn't the industry where human ingenuity shines. Rather, it's the industry where indignity is rewarded. The harm of porn has splash effects in almost everything it touches. Exploitation drives demand to the content. The exploited are forced to endure their shame while their customers get off and the aggregators profit. If it sounds similar to the relationship of a pimp, John, and prostitute, it should. It's just magnified to a much larger scale. Contemplating one's relationship with porn, it doesn't hurt to think about the downstream effects that porn has on everyone. Consumers, participants, even those who didn't want to be there willingly. Getting off to images and videos might seem free of consequences, but the reality is that most of the consequences are hidden from you so that you keep coming back. Ethics and morality are boner killers. No place for that on Pornhub. They want loyal customers. Anyway, I hope this is food for thought. This is Road to Recovery. Stay safe, stay well, and stay on that road to recovery.